Welcome back, everybody, to where I
This
set
thing.
up. More specifically, to drop your database daily because, yep,
I would like one more person to notify me because the site's been hacked.
yes,
Because
yes,
that's been a lot of fun.
yep. And for those who haven't read the forum post or where we've commented in multiple places, basically what happened yesterday is Tim literally deleted the database of the website.
How did you do that exactly?
He keeps saying Linux is a superior OS, and then he does this. So I'm not really sure. But we're doing some stuff on the back end where we're updating just the theme. Nothing dramatic overhaul or anything like that, but make it faster, make it a little bit better. And I suspect that he was trying to wipe out a test server and wiped out the production. And I know
hmm
he is probably the first person in the world to ever do that in a live environment. Just kidding, it happens more frequently than you'd think.
Yeah. I mean, a timely reminder that backups are important. you
Yep.
know, I had to repost 3 articles, but that was not a big deal in the scope of things. Better than reposting 300 articles.
Yep. Yeah, basically we the downtime, he fortunately he did it and he knew he did it. He's like, "Oh shit." And so then they immediately kicked off restoring a backup, which takes about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes give or take, and
Yep.
it was about 12 hours old, and that's just kind of what happened. And so the people who were freaking out saying you've been hacked, no, not even close. Basically, when WordPress detects that there's no database, it says, "Hey, let's set up a database," and somebody just did that through the page that was exposed and then added 2 comments, and that was it. It was never, the
Right.
site was never compromised. It was just a naked
Yep.
install of
Okay.
WordPress. So
Excuse me while I push my cat off the table. That's enough of this. Come on, let's go. Off we go. All right. This has become Paul's lack of control over animals daily. I don't know what is going on in my house other than the relationship between the master and the pet is unclear. Come on, out. Out with you.
speaking of that relationship, Paul, Microsoft built. I don't believe it's their first Linux operating system, but yesterday, late in the day, on a very happy webcast, they announced Sphere OS.
Well, I guess the way they're putting it is it's the first one they're distributing,
Yes.
which, yeah, okay, it's accurate. Microsoft had a Xenix Unix variant back in the 80s, I think. And, they have Linux in their data centers on switches and so forth, and they do custom work with Linux there. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of interesting because the headline here is Microsoft just introduced a new OS, and it's not based on Windows; it's based on Linux, and that's notable. I think that's absolutely notable. It's only part of the broader platform, which of course includes web services, a big security component, and then also custom hardware that Microsoft's making. And this ties in nicely to that. If you want to make software, you got to make your own hardware kind of thing I've been talking and writing about. I'm going to murder this animal. Get out of here.
Your cat is such an ass.
It's just unbelievable. And she just keeps coming back. It's like a little Terminator. I'm seriously going to punt this thing right through the uprights. Like, God damn it. Anyway, love animals and everything, but give me a break. This story is really big, and it's really big on many levels. One thing I'm probably going to write up. I started it, but I've seen a wide range of articles, and I have to go back and read how they're written. I just looking at the headlines and the blurbs that basically say Microsoft is adopting Linux because it's more secure. Like the Wall Street Journal has a story like that.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they didn't. In fact, if you pay attention to what they announced, the biggest component of it in many ways was the security element. If Linux was so secure, they wouldn't have had to build all these security services on top of it. The reason they chose Linux instead of Windows is because it's already better established in these embedded systems. It's something that can be made smaller. Microsoft has tried many times over the years to create componentized and embedded versions of Windows. Back to the Windows CE days, all of the mobile stuff. There's various embedded products. Remember, they were going to be in cars and everything. And then most recently with Windows 10 IoT. But, there's only so much you can do. This is another thing, by the way, I should have put this in my article, but another thing I've written about a lot, which is that it's easier to take something small and make it big than it is to take something big and make it small. In terms of technology, what that means is that Linux just started off as a very small thing. It was designed from the get-go to emulate Unix. It works well within this world of switches and embedded devices and so forth. And so that's why Microsoft chose Linux. That Microsoft would have been unable to have made this decision 5 or 10 years ago should be obvious to everyone, and that the thing they would have put out at the time would have been a stink bomb for that reason, because it just would have been too big and heavy and required too many resources, and thus would have been too expensive. The one thing I'm waiting to hear about, by the way, is the licensing piece, because this is another thing I'm going to write up if it's true. In fact, let me just reference what I did write, because, you know, in the many conversations I had a couple of weeks ago after the Terry Myerson stuff, one of the guys I spoke with at Microsoft was telling me that the central failure of Windows Phone was that at that time in 2009-ish, Microsoft was unable to walk away from the Windows licensing model. And they felt that if they had not charged for Windows Phone OS, that it eventually would have negatively impacted the licenses they were acquiring or getting for big Windows. They now feel that if they had just made that thing free, they could have, in fact, been Android. Like, that might have done it. And that, I think there's more to it than that, obviously. I think there are a lot of reasons why Windows Phone failed. But so I was curious to hear this mention of royalty-free licensing with regards to the MCU design, which is that hardware bit.
Yeah.
But if you look at what they really write and what they really said, Brad Smith yesterday said, we're going to jumpstart this ecosystem and license this technology and intellectual property royalty-free to any silicon manufacturer. And they already have a list of silicon manufacturers they're going to be working with, including, by the way, Qualcomm will be making these things as well in the future. But if you look at the website, actually what it says is it's only the security component, that unique thing that Microsoft is adding on top of Linux, that is being licensed for free. So I don't know if that means that Azure Sphere OS, which is Microsoft's operating system, will come with a licensing fee or not. I've reached out to Microsoft to find out, because it's very, very unclear. And if you look through all of their documentation, they never say anything more than one mention, and it's only for the security stuff.
Yeah, so a couple interesting thoughts here. One, that's a unique aspect that you're bringing up here. But on the licensing thing, I almost wonder if there's obviously going to be some sort of Azure component. Maybe that's how they're looking to monetize it, right? It's like you can use this thing for free as long as your data is dumping up into our cloud.
Actually, okay. It's good that you meant. I'm sorry to interrupt. I did, but you actually have just touched on the other thing that is not very clear, which is they've given this thing an Azure name. So that suggests Azure services. My belief, and it's just based on the way the world works, is that they probably won't require Azure on the back end for everything, right? This is going to have to work with heterogeneous services. There's no doubt about it. That said, Microsoft is absolutely going to do everything they can to make developers and solution providers want to use the Azure services that are sitting on the back end. It was very interesting to me that in this announcement of this Azure branded thing, there was almost zero discussion at all of any of the back-end Azure services that someone might want to use with this thing, right?
Yeah.
Build's coming up. I know we keep kind of punting everything off when we have these discussions to build, because what else are we going to do? But I can only imagine that a big component of the session list and the topic discussion at Build is going to be around this entire platform. And that discussion will include the back-end services and possibly this, I don't know, subscriptions may be the wrong word, but the way that they'll monetize that through offerings that are going to be unique to those devices. In fact, one of the things Microsoft could do that would be really smart would be, to tier their pricing for Azure services so that they were less expensive when you use them on this type of device.
Yep. One other thing that was kind of nestled, if you will, into that announcement, which I actually think this is kind of interesting from a nerdy and geek perspective. Microsoft is actually leveraging things that they've learned hardening the Xbox into this hardware, into this new Sphere OS, which you think about, it makes a lot of sense. They have millions of Xboxes, several generations, and people want to hack them, right? They want to put custom game ROMs and all that sort of thing. It's the exact same thing here. This is a custom scenario of that type of model, but they have a lot of experience of hardening silicon that is in your home in this type of an IoT world. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting aspect, that you can thank Xbox for some of the security.
I thought it was a little goofy when he had the little chip on the tweezers or whatever. He's like, "Look how small this thing is. It's like the size of a fingernail." It's like, yeah, Brad, that's how big chips are now. But I it's probably fair to say that the system on a chip design that is that thing is probably smaller still than the system on a chip that you would find in a smartphone, like a Qualcomm
Yeah.
845, whatever it is. The die on that thing's probably bigger because it does more, right? I think these things are octa-core efficiency and performance cores. They've got onboard networking and graphics and all kinds of other things. This does too. I mean, absolutely. But it also has RAM and storage on there, which is kind of interesting. I don't know how many cores there are in this. I don't off the top of my head. There's at least 2. I think that it might be at least 4 actually, but whatever it is, the different types of cores. It's a small chipset, of course it is, because it's going to be in embedded devices. This is something that has to fit in a little light switch or in a children's toy, like you kept saying. It's going to be everywhere, and it provides something that apparently hasn't been available in an MCU type device yet, which is that intelligent edge part of the equation, meaning a processor / chipset that's powerful enough to do on-device AI, right?
Yeah.
Where you're connecting with the back-end AI services that Azure or whatever might provide, but this thing can do what any modern microprocessor or chipset does in a phone or whatever. I mean, and that apparently is a first. I mean, that's the way they described it. I don't know anything about this market, so this is my my first kind of like real thinking about that. But it is kind of interesting. It is small. I mean, and for sure. And the idea is that this thing's small enough that it can fit in tiny things and work. So interesting.
Yeah, no, it really, really is. Speaking of Xbox, Paul, I'm thinking next week I might be buying an X.
Wow, how come?
Mostly just because I realized that I'm going to be playing all my PUBG on the Xbox, and that's how to. I don't think I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to wait a little bit, but a bit being a week, but good chance next week.
I get the whole PC game machine thing, but again, as part of this, this Azure Sphere thing has been very interesting to me because it's I think I wrote it as like a confluence of these themes that I've been writing about for a long time. And one of the other themes is this notion of the right tool for the job, right? I often write about it or think about it or talk about it in terms of like consumer technology. Like I read on a tablet, or you might read on a Kindle device instead of a computer or instead of your phone, because it's just it may be the right tool, right? Rather than trying to do a bunch of things on one device. You may disagree with it. This is obviously a personal thing, but Linux in the case of the Azure Sphere thing is the right tool for that job, right? I mean, it's not, it's like we talked earlier, like we said earlier, it's smaller, more componentized, et cetera. I feel like consoles are the right tool for the job, generally speaking, for gaming, right? In the sense that it's this middle market part of the gaming market, right? There's the real hardcore guys who are always going to have, multi-core GPUs and craziness, super expensive systems. And then there's going to be the real casual set on the other end. They're playing little games on their phones and stuff, and on Facebook probably, which is terrible, but whatever. But I think for that kind of core middle part of the market, the beauty of the Xbox, and particularly the Xbox One X, is that you get the quality from a graphics presentation that you want, and you just turn it on and it goes. And there's something to be said for that. I know that PC gamers kind of dump on us for wanting to play in a console. But I look at this like Call of Duty, which I play all the time. It's amazing looking. It plays great. I don't know. I just feel like it's the right compromise is a tough word, but I think it's just the right space.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't think Microsoft gets enough credit for, at least on the Xbox side, is the ability to game with friends is extremely well done on the Xbox. And that's where most of my friends are playing. And so it's easier just to fire that up, jump into a chat room, and just be off and running. It takes 3 little clicks of the button and you're up and playing. And so it's just a better experience for me, and I think I'm going to finally bite the bullet.
Also
next
for
week.
the lonely losers such as myself that don't have friends and play by themselves and mute everyone else on Xbox Live, also ideal. It works really well for that too.
Yep. And here's a fun, since we're using Teams all the time. So I had this great idea, Paul, right? I put the show notes in the little Teams chat, and we discussed yesterday how I can't go to that right now, otherwise your video will cut to the show notes. So what I did, I'm thinking, I'm using my brain up here. I'm like, okay.
Tell me you printed it out.
No, I don't have a printer in my house.
I know. Just say that would be amazing.
But here's I was thinking, I'm like, I got this figured out. I'll pull it up on my phone, right? So I open Teams, I hit Teams thing, I click the FRD show notes, and this is what it shows me. Cannot open link.
That's amazing. Okay, so what I thought you were going to say is by opening that on your phone, this call would shut down. You know,
Not quite that bad, but all it does is open OneNote on my phone, and then I think it's because my OneNote synced to my personal account, not the work account. It's like, Jesus.
So I've learned a lot using Teams for just a couple of days, and what I've learned is that I've been too complimentary about this product, and it has an amazing number of problems that are just such obvious UX stupidity. Like I have a hard time understanding how this is as good as it is right now. It must be. I think the issue is we're using it like we use Skype, right?
Yep.
So far, I mean, I know we're going to do other things with it, but for right now, we've just kind of recreated what we were doing in Skype.
Yep.
And it's not even fair to say it has the same problems as Skype. It hurts me to say this. It's worse than Skype. Like, it's just not as good as Skype. And that should never be said of anything.
Yeah, well, the biggest pain in the butt is that you can't change your audio video settings without being in a call or multi-window.
Which is crazy. Also, as we discovered today, and I've had this problem in Skype, to be fair. This is one of those places where it is just as bad as Skype. We start the call. We go through it. People don't see this because it would be awful. Mostly it involves me swearing. And there's a period of time where nothing is working and we don't know why. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes it's me. And you had said to me, I'm sure the reason you can't hear me is because you did some, or, something's wrong with your configuration because I don't think it's over here. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. I haven't touched this thing. We use it for this and I never use it again. And we come back and I use it again and it's all screwed up. Well, sure enough, whatever the 3 settings in there, I think it's like audio, video, and microphone.
Yep.
All of them were wrong. All of them. And I
can confirm.
I don't. Why? I'm switching to Linux, Brad.
I don't know, Paul. Well, don't do like our developer did.
Yeah, I'm deleting the database. We need to start fresh.
Days without a workplace injury, 0. That's what Paul sent me earlier. Speaking of lasting injuries, we'll wrap it up here. But Paul, there's a new build of Windows 10 for fast ring users. I think it ends with a 4 instead of a 3 this time. And I think we all know that this is RTM Part 2.
Right.
And so it'll make its way through the rings unless they screwed something up.
Kind of arbitrarily doing it as a new build. It could have been fixed with a CU, which is the normal way to do it. Mm-hmm. The problem is for people who follow the magic window trick that I keep talking about, you now have to re-enroll in the Insider program. As of today, you have to go in as a fast member because that's the only people who are getting this now. Install the build, reboot your computer, disenroll from the Insider program, reboot your computer, and then you're back to where we were, 2 weeks ago. If they had done it as a CU, a cumulative update, or I guess a quality update, you would not have to do that. So thanks, Microsoft. I literally commented on the fact that I had some 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it was, upgraded all of my computers to RS4, disenrolled them from the Insider preview, and now I have to go through the process of redoing it. And I've done, I think, 5 or 6 so far, but I have more to go. So yeah, it's fun doing this again. It's good practice.
Yeah, well, you'll get that in. But you got anything else today, Paul, before you slap some cats?
Actually, she left finally. She has a hard time getting the message. Anywho, no, I guess not. How about you?
Couple meetings today.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know. For a brief moment, there was sun. I almost said sun shining through this window, and it was amazing. I even put my hand in it just to feel the warmth.
Oh, nice. We've had no such shun today. Well, we've had shunning, but
we got a lot of overcast. It's supposed to get sunny-ish, and then tomorrow it's supposed to be like 70, and then it's supposed to be back into 50, and then blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's going to get back into the north. And here comes the cat again.
All right.
Okay.
Well, folks, that wraps it up for today. We'll catch you right back here tomorrow on First Ring Feline Daily.
Okay.